Hey everybody, it is January 22nd, 2017, and this is your episode 77 of At Percussion. We have a super full house today, so I'll start with all the regulars that are here. We have Laura Black.
Hi.
And Megan Arns.
Hello.
Ben Charles, how's it going, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you, Casey?
So we're going to, just fine, thank you. So we're going to start this new thing where we maybe try to invite some co-hosts in, and we happen to have just, 3 extras today. So we'll start over there with Megan is her grad student, Anna Provo. Hey, Anna.
Hello.
And over here, my grad student in his podcast shirt, Caleb Pickering's back. Hey. And, of course, Brandon Arve, we've had on the podcast before, but he and I got chatting and talking all things podcast. And I said, hey, you should sit in on this next one. So, hey, Brandon, thanks for coming back.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
Yeah, sure. So, listen, our guest today is the Director of Percussion Studies at Stephen F. Austin State University. He frequently tours universities and high schools both nationally and internationally to present recitals, workshops, masterclasses, and clinics on various topics, including electroacoustic percussion, contemporary marimba, concert snare drum, marching percussion, percussion ensemble, steel band, and world music. He's the new chair of the PAS Health and Wellness Committee, and he's our friend Brad Meyer. How's it going?
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And coincidentally, he's another person in Texas, and Caleb is here for another person in Texas. So
thank goodness. I felt that there was something good going on here, so that's why.
Right.
You people from Texas need other people from Texas.
I think it's 3 in a row, right?
Yeah, 3 in a row, 3 Texas.
Yeah, unacceptable. So, Brad, what's new, man? What's going on?
Well, just growing the beard. That's what's new in the world of percussion. So that's about all that's happening.
Everybody's talking about it.
Yeah, if you're not growing a beard, you're wrong.
I've noticed there is a certain look with a lot of contemporary percussionists, and I'll cite some of our friends in percussion that a lot of people know. And it seems to be there are a lot of big beards, kind of that mountain man look. Would you guys agree with me?
I think it's the evolution of the mustache, because the previous generation, everyone had a mustache, like Jim Campbell, Mike Rosen, Bill Mursh, Gordon Stout.
So
We're
we do have
back to a Brahms beard, I guess.
Yeah.
I hope someone uses this podcast in a dissertation.
Well, I'm taking it off of there was the movement, the lumber sexual that came out a little while ago, and SFA, our mascot, is the Lumberjacks. So I figured, if I want to get tenure, I better look the part.
That's fair.
Have to get the plaid shirt.
Oh, it's back home. It's being ironed.
Oh yeah, you let Caleb borrow it.
He's from Texas.
they all share clothes. Yeah.
Well,
Brad.
Yeah, the new stuff in the world, I guess for me was last week I gave a solo recital of 4 pieces, and 3 of them were premieres, and really excited. A couple people that are on this podcast were also part of consortiums on various pieces. So it was a really fun way to start the semester. It's something that I do in the fall and spring. First day of classes, I do either a solo recital or a duo recital with the sax professor here, Nathan Knabb. And I love it because I can practice all break, come back, do the recital, kind of gets the kids going, gets them in gear, gets them going. All right, it's not just syllabus week, it's actually time to start practicing and getting stuff done. So it was really neat to do a lot of premieres and get that recital kind of done and show the kids some new works.
Well, please tell us more about this commission. I saw Anna and Megan did a high five when you said that. So I'm guessing Megan and or Anna are on this commission, this consortium?
Yeah, it's, well, the one that they're on is the one with Alexis Bacon, who is a great composer that I met at the Interlochens Art Camp 2 years ago, which is why I had this snazzy blue shirt that I now realize that I'm wearing.
You're in uniform.
Yeah. And so I met with Alexis while I was up there, and it was really neat. I kind of connected with her because she did some commissioning works with Paul Beyer up at NIU, and saw some of that stuff, and I was like, that's the type of stuff that I want to do more of.
Greg Beyer.
Or sorry, Greg Meyer.
Yeah,
What did
yeah.
I say?
Paul, the other one.
Meyer.
Paul's at Clemson.
Yeah. No.
Hey, but I can't tell you how many times I've said Greg Meyer and Brad Beyer.
It's a circle. Well, and him and I have shaved heads, so that works.
I guess so. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well,
But,
what exactly is this piece written
Yeah.
for? Is this sax and percussion?
It's no, this was my solo recital that I did this semester. So this was a vibraphone piece with tape, and it involved a little bit of like shaker playing where I used kashishi, and it also involved playing on some snare drum and kind of dealt with a lot of subject matter from this spoken language, Native American language, Ojibwe, and really, really interesting backing track. And I really enjoyed the piece. I thought it came together really well, and yeah, it was just I think it's a really timely subject too, with all the Dakota pipeline access stuff going on, and thought that it might connect with some people even more than it normally would have, kind of being timely.
Cool. Yeah. Brandon, you have a question, don't you? Oh shoot, you're muted, I think, Brandon.
Can you hear me?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay, that was my fault. So I don't know if you guys know this, but Brad and I both went to UK for DMAs. And, there's sort of been a little bit of a pipeline after you finish here. And so, like, Brad was at Center College for 2 years, right?
Just one.
1 year? Okay.
Yeah.
You were doing, I think, did you do the CKYO thing too?
Yeah, the Central Kentucky Youth Orchestra.
Yeah. So, after you finish a DMA, it can be kind of interesting. You might go straight into a job. You might go into a freelance thing. You might do something completely different. I know that you did a bit of freelancing as soon as you got out. So I've been kind of interested in this topic of like the side hustle. Do you guys know this term?
No,
It's very millennial of you, Brandon.
Yeah, I know,
I
right?
don't know about this.
So it's like if you had a main gig, but then you had something to supplement some income or, supplement an interest on the side. I kind of think of it kind of like the freelancing stuff that I do and a lot of other people do, of course. So like, what were some of your, if you will, side hustles when you got out of school? Whether it was your undergrad, master's, DMA, whatever, that kept you in music, and paid some bills and whatever.
Well, it's, I like this because Brandon and I actually know each other from way far back, because we both knew each other from South Carolina, and we also met before that as well. So we've kind of been around for a while with each other. So it's been pretty awesome. So the side hustle thing is, that's just kind of a new term for an old thing that I think we all do. It's the picking up church gigs and doing stuff that makes money that you wouldn't necessarily put on your CV or resume. And I remember, in my master's, I didn't have a whole lot of that. I was kind of focused on the school stuff, and I guess my side things would have been teaching at Madison Scouts and Blue Stars. But, I didn't really have too much on the side. It was only after I graduated from UK with my DMA, and I was kind of in that limbo area where a lot of post-DMA people find themselves, where they're, you don't have any experience, and so you're trying to find a job, but every job wants you to have experience, so it's that catch-22 thing. And so I was teaching at Tennessee Tech when Eric Willey was there as an adjunct first semester. I taught the Center College thing, which was really just 1 day a week of teaching like 5 or 6 non-percussionists drum set, and then trying to wrangle like trumpet players and flute players to be in a percussion ensemble, which, is really interesting because you do your DMA and you envision yourself teaching all these amazing undergrads and graduate students that play percussion at this high level, and then your first gig is teaching students that aren't even percussionists, which is actually why I wrote this compilation through Bakovich called B Radicals. It's kind of my little tap space recital that I wrote for those specific students, and so that turned into a published thing years later. So that was kind of on the side as well. And then I teach at Dunbar High School, where Brian Morgan, who's another ex-alumni person in Lexington, teaches. And, just try to do anything I could to make money while still getting as much higher-end exposure, like we made a large chamber ensemble called Explorium that went to Taiwan and played a week-long festival over there. Tried to play with as many kind of duo people that would allow me, and was applying for everything. So, the side hustle, I think for me, being post-doctoral stuff, was all about trying to get exposure and, work on that CV and get that experience that all the jobs are looking for, while still, being able to eat and live and do all that stuff that's kind of necessary.
Right. So what kind of advice do you have for people that might be in that position, kind of out in the world, and like, how do you approach somebody to say, hey, we should do this thing together?
Oh,
Like
man, just give up. Yeah, just give
Yeah.
up. If you don't have a beard, it's not worth it.
Get that beard, eh?
Yeah, put that on the resume. No, it's all about perseverance, and, it's something that I teach or talk about a lot with my students. There's no better time than now, because, we got people in various stages of their career on this podcast, and one of the things that you realize the more you get along into it, which I know I'm not terribly old, I'm only 33, but I can look back and see I had the most time then, and now I'm just like swamped, and I've got everything to do right now that doesn't really deal with those things that we generally think of as our careers. When you're in your doctoral stuff, you're just thinking about how great can I play, and when you get beyond that, you're like, man, I gotta teach all day and I gotta submit proposals and stuff. So it's it can be exhausting, and when you're out of that DMA, it can seem kind of like you're frozen, but in actuality, you have the most time to do whatever you want. So exhaust yourself.
Yeah,
That's advice.
Yeah, like when I got out of school, kind of looking around, like, how can I piece this thing together so I don't have to work at Arby's, 8 hours a day. And I started to think about all the different skills that I had. What skills do I have? Which ones don't I have? What are my strengths? And I've been doing a lot of podcast listening and book reading recently where they say, focus on your strengths. There's so many times, I think, in music, especially in performance, that we think, well, my drum set playing is here, my marimba playing is here, so I got to bring it up. And we're constantly trying to balance out the strengths and weaknesses. But at a certain point, as I discovered anyway, for me, it's been important to focus on the strengths. Would you agree with something like that?
Yeah, and I think, a lot of people, when we think about strengths, in that post-DMA world, you're on a shoestring budget, and like life's coming at you full force, and you're out of your realm because you're not in school anymore, so you got tons more free time, and you feel guilty about doing the things that you used to do because you should be making money, but you don't want to be working at Kroger to make money. So, the big thing for me, especially with people that are in that kind of situation, is, money will come later, and it stinks living on a shoestring budget, but just try to do as many things artistically as possible. And then if you have to do things to make money, do that. But, I see so many people that just kind of get out and they're like, well, I need to make money because I'm an adult right now. And it's like, well, yeah, you're an adult, but you also have all this great education, and you're just going to go and be a Starbucks barista or something and just kind of flounder about. It's like, get out there. And one of the things that I did was I went to Transylvania University, which sounds like it's out of a vampire movie. And
Right.
It's Transylvania University is right next to UK. And I
Pennsylvania.
I met the electronics professor there, and I didn't know him at all, and I just introduced myself. I was like, hey, I'm out of school, but I'm in town. You're into electronics. I'm into electronics. You want to write a piece for me? And we just kind of formed this weird, not duo, but like partnership where he'd write me a piece and I'd perform it, and we'd record it, and then he'd submit it, and I'd try to get funding and he'd try to get funding, and we'd go play ICMC or go to Seamus, and it was really interesting. But if I was trying to bag groceries and work at Starbucks just to make the comfortable ends meet, I don't think a lot of people realize that you don't have to make a ton of money. You can live off very little and have a lot of free time to put towards what you actually are investing yourself into doing, which is to, have an active performance career, which will hopefully develop contacts, which will hopefully help you land those first jobs, which then land you to next jobs. So, you got to kind of keep your eye on the prize, as they kind of say in a lot of sports stuff, and don't get so involved with, working too many side hustles that are just to make money. Because, you could be a Lyft driver all day long if you want, but then you're just sitting in your car not practicing.
Could you tell us about those collaborations with the electronics professor, and maybe give us a composer's name that we could look up?
Yeah, his name's Tim Polishek, and he's the I think it's just electronics and composition person at Transylvania University. He wrote a couple pieces for me. The first one was a drum set piece, and it was called Echoes of Steel, and it was for drum set and electronics, and it kind of harkened back to the 1920s, or I guess those 1940s steel boom, where lots of high rises were going up, and a lot of that, the kitchen of the future, and really neat audio clippets that kind of take you back to that very specific kind of caricature-esque time of radio announcers and the boom of industrialization. It's a really neat drum set part. The reason why I like it is because it's not really written by it's not written by a drummer. He's a composer, and not that he doesn't know about percussion. He just when you get to a certain level, you don't know what falls idiomatically. So he writes some stuff, and it's a little funky how it lays out, but it sounds really neat. And so I kind of enjoyed this isn't how I'd write it, because as a percussionist, you're thinking, how can I move fluidly around it? And so these kind of like little interruptions of your natural flow make it a really interesting and fun piece, I found, in the long run to play. Early on, I was like, this sucks. But, that's what I think actually made that piece fun, was how it didn't lay well. And then he also wrote another piece, which I just played at the New York City Electroacoustic Music Festival this past summer, and it was called Engravings for Prepared Snare Drum. And one of the cool things that a lot of UK drummers know about, and hopefully a lot of people know about in general, is the drummer from Wilco is Glenn Cochee, and he has this really cool modified snare drum that he uses for his multi-piece Monkey Champ. And so I kind of took that idea and just made my own version, and he dug it, and he wrote this kind of Max MSP iPad kind of synthesizer thing that took the sound and ran it through, and you could adjust in real time how much reverb, if there was a delay, if it was a wet sound, a dry sound. It was really interesting because it just allowed the performer to be in control. And then on another screen, you had all these graphs that related to different types of it was things that related to Kentucky, like annual rainfall or economic growth or job stuff, just stuff that had interesting graphs that you could improvise off of and kind of make the piece have some sort of written but not strict compositional process too. So more free form.
I love Glenn's stuff. He's a genius.
Yeah, Glenn's amazing.
Yeah.
So, Brad, I had one more for you, if that's cool.
No.
Next. No? Okay, next. I'm going to mute myself. No, so to go back to this like side job thing, I do a lot of thinking on this stuff. Not just for myself, but I try to do some clinics, talking about, what can you do while you're in school to help set yourself up for post-graduation time, And as we see this more and more every year, there's more and more people graduating with these degrees in performance and education and whatever, and so few jobs. And so, we keep talking about the side hustle. This concept is just going to keep growing and growing, of course. So maybe a two-part question here, like what skills did you find it important for making it after school? Not necessarily musical ones, but what skills did you find important? And maybe what classes or events that happened to you or that you were a part of in school prepared you for your time as a freelancer?
What was that second one you kind of cut out there?
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So like what classes or events
classes.
in school? Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, how can you use what you're doing in school?
It's that bibliography class, right? Like that's the one.
Get that dissertation done.
It's that one that spends
MLA
like
in
8
Chicago.
hours a week on like Chicago style versus ML.
Absolutely.
No? Okay.
The Sansel book.
Sorry, I don't know anything about DMA.
Or the comps, that really helps prepare you.
Right? It's all that. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Gives you the shivers. No, so the first part of that was skills in regards to maybe music or stuff outside. I think the biggest part about music isn't necessarily how talented you are, like how fast you can play your paradiddles is kind of like how I overly romanticize that. If you're a DMA, it's kind of an assumption that you play well already. Like if you're a DMA, you played well because you got in a program. I don't know any programs that accept DMAs that are, well, they're not a very good player, but we'll give them a shot. It's like, you're not going to make it if you're not a good player. I think the biggest skills, I mean, that's just my opinion.
Ben just typed JMU just so everybody knows.
You're only insulting me.
I know.
No one else is
You're
offended.
just, you're just insulting Caleb. Yeah. He wore this shirt again for you, Ben.
Everything I do is for you, Ben.
Anyways.
But I think the biggest skills that you develop in your DMA is personal relationships. One of the biggest overarching parts about music is it's not about necessarily how great you play. That's a rather not small but not a huge part of your overall thing. It's developing relationships with people and communicating. I think one of the best things in terms of skills is joining our ensembles or small chamber groups or duos, like making them or finding people at different universities, because we all get into our own microcosm. I was at UK, so it was very easy for me to try to just stay with my UK people, but instead I was fortunate enough to meet some people through Brian Mason, who was at Morehead State University, and that led to that Explorium group. And through that Explorium group, I met several people who all taught at Stephen F. Austin, which I had never heard of before I met those people. And my playing, I believe, is part of the reason that they said you need to come down here for what was a 1-year adjunct internship or replacement. They're like, you are super prepared and really easy to work with, and you just seem to be the kind of guy that would be great at this job. And I also had the experience of teaching at Tennessee Tech, so that helped on my CV. But I think it was the personal skills that, while being in that chamber group, I showed I could be a great colleague if I get the chance. And I think that that's the skills that you should really work on in your DMA, is not just trying to get A's in classes, because that should be a given. Being a good performer, that should be a given. It's, this is your pre-career. And getting A's in classes is great, but that's not really your career. Your career is dealing with people. I mean, that's why most people get fired from college jobs. It's not because they couldn't play paradiddles fast enough. It's because they rub people the wrong way. It's because they yell at someone in a meeting instead of being calm and acting scholarly or mature and trying to handle it, or just having differences of opinion and being able to work through that without it being this, personally offensive situation. So I think that those are some of the skills that you can definitely work on when you're at the end of, or in your DMA or after your DMA, is get into some ensembles and show people I am a good colleague. And it, being in ensembles is great musically, and it's those connections that help you build a career rather than, I do a lot of stuff on YouTube, but I don't think anyone would ever hire me for a job because I play on YouTube.
I don't know. I think you've recorded literally everything in the repertoire.
I'm working on
how many YouTube videos do you have, Brad?
I don't even know. I was
There's over 200 on your channel, I saw,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of those some of those are your students too, right?
Yeah, I do some recordings of like percussion ensemble in my steel band. I'd probably say 80 to 100 are solo stuff, and the rest are stuff that I've conducted or my students that I've taught. So in some way relates to me. But yeah, it's just been a nice thing for my life that I enjoy doing.
That's
Well,
cool.
what you were just saying about this, personality is really important. It reminds me when we had John Parks on, and we were talking about applying for jobs and what it takes to get one of these gigs. And I said sort of what Brandon just said. Wow, there's so many people with these degrees, and there's more and more, and there's so few job openings, and John Parks kind of said, no, man, 70% of those people are assholes.
Yeah.
I believe that's literally what he said. It's like, well, you're right. Yeah, that is true. So yeah, it probably seems overwhelming, and it seems really, disparaging, but, you think, okay, by his number, maybe only 30% of those are like actually competitive against you.
And how many people would that actually be?
Would
you guess?
It was kind of scary. I mean, on the Benjamin Fraley episode, we did talk about adjuncts and higher ed and DMA and PhD degrees, and we did have some actual numbers on those, but the source we were drawing from didn't have a separate DMA versus PhD. It was just higher ed in general, so not sure, but at least it's not as many as it appears. We definitely know that.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people get hung up on the CMS thing, like there's 4 jobs a year open. There's so many jobs that open up. They're just adjunct, or, they're not listed. So, that should hopefully cheer some people up.
Yeah.
By the way, are you guys familiar with the wiki pages?
Yeah.
So there was, because I also am into ethnomusicology, and when I first started to look for jobs, I did a master's in ethnomusicology too, and so I was like really casting that wide and thinking like, okay, well maybe it would be something combining the two. So I was looking at the ethnomusicology wiki, and when I was applying for jobs, there was not a percussion one, so I think this is fairly recent. I think Jeff Barudin might run it. You guys know what I'm talking about? Have you seen it?
Yeah, I think Andy Bliss, like 7 or 8 years ago, started one. He probably took it down because
maybe
after he got a job, I think he kind of let that maybe get a little out of date, so he might have taken that down.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure he had one originally too.
Well, there's a very active, thorough one right now. I think Jeff Barudin has posted on it a lot. So I'm sure if you just Google percussion wiki, you can find it. But there's a lot of stuff up right now, and I guess 2 things. One is I think reminding people that, probably right out of your DMA, I think people think that getting a full-time tenure track position only teaching percussion is like the only way to go, or the only thing they want to do. And, there are a lot of great jobs out there that can lead to other things. And Brad, when you mentioned earlier, it's hard to get a job without getting teaching experience, but you can't get teaching experience until you have a job. I always thought that was so frustrating when I was first starting to apply. And you really just have to, sometimes you're not going to make a lot of money, teaching adjunct or teaching a percussion methods class somewhere or something. So could you tell us a little bit more about when you got to SFA and you were in a 1-year position, how now you're in a tenure track position, probably nearing towards going up for tenure, I would assume, maybe?
Kind of.
Midway. How did that job transition?
Yeah, and I love that idea about, not necessarily thinking that you're going to get that I'm only teaching percussion lessons and percussion ensemble gig. Like, that's the gig a lot of people, they're like, that would be my dream gig. And those exist, but they're super hard to come by, especially for early career percussion teachers. One of the things that I was encouraged and kind of I wanted for myself as well is in my doctorate, I kind of realized, oh crap, there's a job crisis. So I was like, there's got to be something else that I like about music besides just percussion. And so I got what's called a music theory pedagogy certificate, which is like a step above a minor in your DMA. So it allows you basically for people to hire you and say you could teach freshman or sophomore written and oral theory if we need you to. And actually, while I was in my first year here as just an adjunct, I was still applying for jobs because I wasn't tenure track. Mm-hmm. And I actually went to a place where it was a theory and percussion thing, and it was labeled as percussion instructor who could also do some theory. That situation was a little weird because I got there and I realized that it was actually a theory coordinator who could also teach a couple percussion lessons.
Oh, wow.
But, I mean, at the same time, I would have definitely taken that gig if I didn't have anything else on the plate because that's still great experience, and it's something that would lead me to the next step. And it's just like degrees. There are steps after your DMA that lead you to probably where you think you want to be. And so if you want that just percussion lesson and just percussion ensemble gig, well, there's probably going to be 2 or 3 gigs in between your DMA, and when you get there, if you're lucky enough to get there, because those are the gigs that are only listed on CMS. Those are the big ones that everyone's like, tenure track, want DMA preferred, master's required, needs 40 years of experience, and that's what you get when you look at those posts.
Yeah.
But in that first year of my being at SFA, I was basically hired on as the percussion instructor who was a one-year replacement for the percussion guy, Scott Harris, who moved up to being the interim director of the school. And so they were doing the director of the school search. And so I didn't even think I was going to be here because that search could have gone any way. He could gone back down to the percussion position. I didn't know. So it was really up in the air. So I was really applying for a lot of stuff. And he took the job at Western Kentucky University being the chair there. So that was good for me about halfway through the year because I knew at least the job would be open. So they asked me, they're like, well, he accepted the job kind of early spring. It'd be a little rushed to do a percussion search. Would you stick around for a second year? So in my mind, it was a no-brainer. It's like get 2 full years of experience at a place and hopefully have an inside track of the job that I like here. Or,
Sure.
At the time, the job that I like here that I still like now. And so I was like, yeah, I'll stick around for another year while you do the search. And they did the search, and I was just lucky enough to win it and got to stay here. And I love the gig here. So it's like one of those things, you just, like I was talking about, I could have played it really safe because my call to come here for that first year, I got, I think, like August 5th or 6th, and the school semester started like August 20th. So I had 2 weeks to get from Kentucky to, Nacogdoches, Texas. We call it the Nac, if you're hip.
We call this the bird.
Nice.
We call this Como.
This is Caleb.
Got to push your glass.
I don't know what to do anymore.
But, in Kentucky, I had kind of a safe thing going on. I was kind of doing what Brandon's doing right now, which is I was teaching at Center. I was teaching Dunbar High School. I was teaching at the local drum shop. What's the drum? Is it Drum Center?
Yeah, Drum Center Lexington.
Drum Center of Lexington.
I'm not doing that, though.
Yeah, but I just couldn't remember the name. And, so I had like these gigs that were going on that I was making money with. And I was like, man, should I give up this, not great, but at least steady thing and move all the way to Texas, which is 14 hours away, and maybe risk only being there 1 year? And I kind of got on the phone with people, and they're like, you're an idiot if you don't take this. Like, it's teaching full-time at the college level. Moving's moving. It sucks. You're going to do it many times throughout your life. Get down here and do it. So I just kind of made the choice and rolled the dice. But in my mind, it was the next logical step. It was, this is the next phase of what I eventually want to be doing, which, I'm fortunate enough that here I get to teach private lessons, percussion ensemble, and steel band. The studio's grown so much that we now have a marching percussion instructor who also teaches percussion methods. I enjoy teaching those things, but, it's one of those things where I could kind of craft it in whatever way it needed to be. And I love my job here. It's fantastic.
That's cool. Laurel, did you have something or did it pass?
I did. Well, it would kind of turn us to some of the articles and things that Brad's written about and
Great.
clinicked about recently. So I thought about this question while we were talking about the side hustle and how you just say yes and you do as many things as you can, because I think there is a tipping point when you've said yes to too much and then you're not helping yourself anymore. And this is fresh on my mind because just this morning Casey was like, honey, you are too stressed out. We have to find something that you're not going to do now. And I know, Brad, that and we all know, like, when that overwhelmed feeling comes, it's burnout. And I know, Brad, that you've written about this and you talked about it at PASIC this last year. And, I'm curious, as with all things like this, did your interest in how do I get rid of this come from experiencing it yourself? Was it just something that you don't experience and therefore thought you had some wise words to say? That whole topic, if you please.
Yeah, I've never been burnt out. I've always been able to do everything. So pretty easy.
It's the beard.
Yeah. Superpowers of the beard.
Yeah, that must be why I get burnt out, is because I don't have enough facial hair.
You can work on it. I'll give
Yeah,
you
get
some.
on
I'll
that,
cut this
though.
off and you can glue it on. No, I got into the subject of burnout because I've gone through it several times throughout my life, and I think everyone does. There's two sides to this coin. I think the first side that's kind of, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, is a lot of people don't push themselves to their max. They get uncomfortable and they'll give up, or something's not going quite the right way and it just really gets them down, and they totally switch paths instead of kind of trudging on and trying to see something through. And that's why I have a hard time talking about burnout, because I am the typical person that I will burn myself out to a crisp, and then I'll the next day be at a conference talking to everyone else about how they shouldn't burn out. So it's like, it's this double-sided coin. So I really think that burnout, it's a part of being a musician. It's not necessarily something that you want to never get into. It's something that if you're really a good musician or a good music educator, you're going to find, hopefully, yourself burn out because you've got so many opportunities that you've agreed to do. And that's when you can then start to figure out if you need to back off stuff and how much. So, for me, I've kind of gone through burnout several times in my life, and I don't think I actually knew I was burnt out. I just at times thought I was overly stressed out and would push myself further than I maybe should have. But I can remember, in the middle of my DMA, I was really burnt out, had personal stuff going on, had school stuff going on. This whole idea of, well, there are no jobs, that alone, that's not even a real thing that was happening to me. It was just this idea of, well, I'm doing all this and I'm never going to have a job. So this kind of self-defeating circular logic, ruminating on something that I can't control. And so I remember in the middle of my doctorate being really burnt out. I remember after my doctorate being really burnt out again. I kind of finished my doctorate and I was like, yeah, I did it, and that's a big check off on the list. And it's kind of one of those life signifiers. I did the thing and I, kind of got rejuvenated by it. And then I spent a year until I got the 1 year gig here. I spent that whole year doing all these gigs that I just hated. I hated teaching drum lessons at the drum center. I hated teaching high school marching band. I hated driving to Danville to teach at Center College. And it wasn't that these were bad opportunities. I was just making them bad. It's all about how you think about it that makes something good or bad. Looking back on it, I wish I had just approached those things with such a better outlook and not things that I had to do because I was trying to build my resume, but like, these are things that I got to do. I got to teach the Center College percussion ensemble, which allowed me to write a whole collection of pieces that got published. And I learned more about teaching trumpet players percussion ensemble music than I have like teaching senior in college who plays great, teaching them Reflections on Water. You just stretch yourself in that different way that you never thought you would. So I think it's important to frame what you're doing. And if you're burnt out, a lot of the times you can find out that you're burning yourself out. And it's because you're approaching whatever that is with that negative mindset of, well, I got to do this. I'm going to be presenting at the Texas Music Educators Conference, and this will be my third conference for the year. And I might do a fourth one at the National Conference for Percussion Pedagogy. And this will be the second time because I'm doing the same clinic I did at PASIC that I'm doing at Team Yay. So it's the burnout clinic. And it could just be another one of these things where it's like, oh, just got to do this so that I can get tenure. Once I get tenure, everything will be perfect. The clouds will open up and I can, disc golf for the rest of my life and have the best life ever. And
So can I ask you a question
you're a
about
big disc
that?
golfer, aren't you?
yes.
Nate told me you're ridiculous.
He beat me yesterday, so I've got
he's there.
He's here. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Nate
so
who?
fill everyone in real quick.
Okay.
Nate Gwarek is a percussionist who Brad and I taught with at Interlochen. And he visited Mizzou right before PASIC and rode to PASIC with us and gave a clinic. But he's teaching adjunct, right? Down at
Right.
SFA this semester with Brad.
He's teaching some lessons in percussion ensemble and doing a music lit class. We're really happy to have him down here. It's been pretty sweet.
Cool. He's new on the Health and Wellness Committee, right?
Yep.
Cool. Ah, yeah. Thought it was a familiar name.
And so is Laurel.
Yay!
Hey.
Health and Wellness is funny because maybe I think you were just hinting at this, Brad, but you kind of feel like you're lying. Like if you're writing about, here's how to like get rid of your anxiety, and then you wake up in the morning and you're like, you just feel like you're lying, like you're just a complete fraud.
Absolutely. I absolutely. It's and I think I might have gotten a little off track, but that's exactly what I think about when I think about health and wellness stuff. Is like a lot of the people that care about health and wellness, or talking about mental health, or people that talk about physical health, are people that have been on the polar opposite side of that spectrum. I talk a lot about mental health simply because I now realize how poorly I took care of myself mentally throughout a lot of my education and even after my education. And it's only in that hindsight that I try to tell people, here are the mistakes that I made. Here's what you can do. And you realize you're throwing that out totally hypocritical because, when people say the big things, eat healthy, exercise, and sleep, everyone just, their eyes just kind of glaze and they're like, yeah, I've heard that my whole life. Whoopity-doo. And it's until you do it that you realize how much it helps your, eating right and sleeping and exercising help your mental health more than your physical health. So, you do feel hypocritical standing up in front of all these people telling them to be healthier, but it's only because on the other side of that spectrum, I've been on both ends of it. Now I work out and I try to take care of myself, but I've been on the other side where I've been 30 pounds underweight and I've been sleeping 2 hours a night and I drank coffee, and then my other staple was, cold coffee. So it's like you get those sides.
Gosh, that's bad, Brad.
Like cold coffee is a morning drink. Hot coffee is more midday, nighttime.
Yeah. How long have you been a yogi?
I'm not.
Oh, I was okay because you have an article all about all right, so this is part of what we're talking about.
Exactly, and it's that hypocritical thing. But no, it's I kind of.
So you guys make stuff up? Is that what I'm hearing?
Right on.
You guys just make stuff. PAS just make stuff
I
up.
feel like I just outed you. It's gonna be all over the news.
I'm getting on the Twitter right now.
We need more peer review here.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I thought too. When it's funny you bring this up because I at that time I was trying to get into some workout stuff. I was talking with this one person who was telling me to do weightlifting, and I was like kind of getting into some cardio and doing all this stuff. And I was like, yoga, that sounds like I should give it a shot. So there's a professor here that teaches some music theory, and she's a cello player. Her name's Sherry, and she co-wrote the article with me. And it was really me collaborating with her. She mainly had the essence of the article. I was just telling her, like, here are the things that I experience or would like to get better. How would you, as a yoga instructor or yoga master, whatever you want to call it, would approach these things from a person that's a teacher of yoga? And so that's why I wrote the article. And I've got like 6 YouTube videos of her, a yoga, instructor, teaching me, a guy who had just started doing a tiny bit of yoga. And I was like, this will be perfect because I suck at yoga. I haven't really done it. You're great at yoga. So if I look horrible doing it, everybody else is going to feel like it's okay because they at least don't look as stupid as me. So that's kind of where that all came from. I was just trying to find ways of, the article talks a lot about like sitting positions and standing positions and sitting on a stool behind timpani positions. It was all stuff I've since learned about from her and used in a lot of my teaching for my undergrads and grad students and high school students. But that's why I wrote the article, because I started to get interested and I just found someone who was knowledgeable on it.
Hey everybody, Casey here. I'm going to stop the episode now. Thanks so much for listening. We'll continue with part 2 next week. It turned out to be a pretty long recording, so I thought it was worth splitting it into 2. It's been really fun having everyone joining us and have such a full house. So thanks everybody. See you next week.